Rome was a city of 1 million people, an ancient metropolis alive with energy and innovation. Its aqueducts brought fresh water from miles away, public baths buzzed with conversation, and the city's streets teemed with merchants, citizens, and travelers from across an empire stretching from Britain to Mesopotamia. Rome was the beating heart of a vast civilization, a symbol of power and prosperity. Fast forward 5 centuries, and the scene had changed dramatically. Rome's population had plummeted to just 30,000, a shadow of its former self, its grand forums and temples now eerily silent. How does the city lose 97% of its people? The answer isn't a single cataclysm, but a slow, messy collapse that unfolded over generations, marked by hardship and uncertainty. The empire's systems, grain shipments, roads, security broke down, making city life dangerous and unsustainable. Without reliable food, protection, or infrastructure, daily life became a struggle for survival. People scattered to the countryside, seeking safety and food on large estates. The once bustling city emptied as families abandoned their homes, hoping for a better life beyond the permanent walls. This shift from urban centers to rural estates transformed society, fragmenting the once centralized economy. Communities and life changed forever. The fall of Rome wasn't just about politics and war, it was about people adapting to their world unraveled. They found new ways to survive, forging new identities in unfamiliar landscapes. It marked the painful end of one era and the uncertain birth of another. The city's decline was both a tragedy and a beginning. The collapse of Rome set the stage for the Middle Ages and the foundations of modern Europe. Out of the ruins, new societies and cultures would eventually emerge. Even the mightiest empires, it turns out, are not permanent. Their legacies endure, but their dominance fades. The story of Rome's fall is a story of transformation, not just destruction, a reminder that history is always moving and that every ending is also a new beginning. The seeds of Rome's collapse were sown inside its own government. The late Roman political system was riddled with corruption and instability. Emperors rose and fell through civil wars, not orderly succession. The Praetorian Guard, meant to protect the emperor, often became kingmakers, selling their loyalty to the highest bidder. Local officials and tax collectors exploited citizens, demanding bribes and pocketing taxes. For ordinary Romans, the government became a source of fear, not stability. Political chaos drained resources and trust, pulling legions from the frontiers to fight other Romans. People stopped identifying with Rome and turned to their local regions for security. The empire was already crumbling from within before any invaders arrived. Systemic corruption and infighting left Rome vulnerable, setting the stage for its downfall. The first cracks in Rome's foundation were entirely self-inflicted. Rome's economy, once a powerhouse that fueled the greatest empire the world had ever seen, began to falter under the weight of its own ambitions. As Rome's expansion ground to a halt, the steady stream of riches from conquered lands slowed, and the empire's financial foundation started to crumble. Without new territories to plunder, the government struggled to pay its vast armies and bloated bureaucracy, draining the treasury at an alarming rate. In desperation, emperors debased the currency, mixing in cheaper metals, causing rampant inflation. Coins lost their value almost overnight, and prices for everyday goods soared beyond reach for many. As trust in money evaporated, trade faltered. People abandoned coins and returned to bartering, exchanging goods directly just to survive. The crushing tax burden fell hardest on small farmers. Many lost their land, forced to become tenant farmers bound to wealthy estates, trapped in a system that resembled the serfdom of the Middle Ages. The once thriving middle class, the backbone of Roman society, vanished, leaving a widening gap between rich and poor. Trade routes, once protected and bustling, became dangerous and unreliable. The unified Roman economy splintered into isolated, self-sufficient estates, each fending for itself. The economic collapse hollowed out the empire from within, weakening its cities and draining its spirit long before the final fall. Rome's legendary prosperity faded into memory, replaced by local economies, shrinking opportunities, and growing poverty across the land. The empire's economic engine sputtered to a halt, its workshops and ports falling silent, accelerating Rome's decline. With wealth and stability gone, the empire could no longer recover or rebuild, leaving its infrastructure to decay. Rome's economic nosedive proved as fatal as any invading army, sapping its strength from the inside. In the end, the empire was breaking apart from the inside out, its greatness happiness undone by the collapse of its own economy. The so-called barbarians weren't just invaders, they were neighbors, allies, and sometimes even Roman soldiers. Many lived alongside Romans for generations, trading, intermarrying, and even serving in the Roman legions. The lines between Roman and barbarian were often blurred, with shared customs and loyalties. Groups like the Goths, Vandals, and Huns had long interacted with Rome, sometimes as trading partners, sometimes as fierce rivals. But when the Huns swept across the steppes, they pushed many other tribes into Roman territory, creating a wave of migration that the empire struggled to control. The Romans mismanaged these migrations, exploiting and mistreating refugees like the Goths. Instead of welcoming new allies, they created resentment and unrest. Eventually, the Goths rebelled, defeating a Roman army at Adrianople, a disaster that shook the empire to its core. After that, Rome's borders became porous, with Germanic groups settling inside the empire, often in exchange for military service. These new settlers brought their own traditions, gradually transforming Roman society from within. These groups formed their own kingdoms within Roman lands, loyal to their leaders, not to Rome. The empire's authority weakened as local chieftains gained power and influence. The policy of using barbarians to fight other barbarians backfired as these groups carved out their own territories. Rome's attempts to play rivals against each other only hastened its decline. Rome was sacked twice, first by the Visigoths, then by the Vandals. These shocking events shattered the myth of Rome's invincibility and sent shockwaves across the ancient world. By 476 CE, the last Western Roman emperor was deposed by a Germanic chieftain. The imperial crown passed into foreign hands, marking the symbolic end of Roman rule in the West. The empire had already been divided and ruled by those who once called outsiders. New rulers adopted Roman customs, but the old order was gone. The fall wasn't a sudden invasion, but a gradual takeover from within. Over decades, Roman identity faded and new cultures took root. Rome's reliance on barbarian allies, once seen as a solution, ultimately hastened its end. The empire became a patchwork of shifting alliances and loyalties. The Western Empire faded, replaced by new kingdoms that blended Roman and barbarian traditions, laying the foundations for medieval Europe. The world order had changed forever, and from Rome's ashes, a new era began. With Rome's collapse, daily life was transformed. Roads fell into disrepair, and travel became dangerous as long-distance trade was cities shrank or were abandoned, their grand buildings scavenged for materials. Life had begun. With no central authority, power shifted to local strongmen, Germanic chieftains, Roman nobles, or ambitious warlords. The Western Empire fractured into small territories ruled by those who could defend them. New kingdoms emerged: Franks in Gaul, Visigoths in Spain, Ostrogoths in Italy, Anglo-Saxons in Britain. Loyalty shifted from a distant emperor to the local lord who offered protection. This personal bond between lord and follower laid the groundwork for feudalism. Law and justice became local, based on custom and oral tradition, not Roman codes. Trials by ordeal or combat replaced court rules. The idea of a unified Roman identity faded, replaced by new ethnic and regional loyalties. The world of emperors was gone, the age of kings and warlords had begun. Medieval Europe was taking shape. As danger increased and power became local, castles replaced Roman cities as centers of authority. Early castles were wooden forts, evolving into stone fortresses, symbols of lord's power and defense. The knight emerged as the new living warrior, granted land in exchange for military service. Mounted combat and the stirrup made knights the dominant force. Society became a strict hierarchy: kings, nobles, knights, and peasants. Peasants worked the land, owing labor and crops to their lord in exchange for protection. This feudal system was the true home of the society. Knights followed nobles, built on these new foundations. Identity, Christianity, replacing Roman citizenship. The Pope emerged as a spiritual leader, creating a parallel power structure across kingdoms. The Church became a major landowner and political force, able to crown or challenge kings. Shared faith provided common values and culture in a fragmented world. The Church's influence shaped medieval politics, society, and learning. As Rome fell, the Church became the backbone of the new era. The medieval world was built around faith as much as force. Rome's fall wasn't a single catastrophe, but a long transformation. Political corruption, economic decay, and invasions unraveled the old world. In its place, a rural, fragmented, and dangerous society emerged. Roman citizenship gave way to new kingdoms and Christian identity. Life became harder and horizons smaller, but new systems and cultures took root. The fusion of Roman, Germanic, and Christian traditions created a dynamic new civilization. Political fragmentation led to the nations of modern feudalism provided stability in a violent age. The seeds of the modern West were sown in Rome's youth. The fall of Rome is a lesson in how civilizations change and adapt. It was the end of one Rome and the beginning of another. Rome's legacy lived on, reshaped into the foundations of our own era.